用声音
碰撞世界，
生动活泼。
大家好，我是丁教导演。那今天这一期是一场英文访谈，按照我们过去做英文节目的习惯，也为了大家方便收听，我会先把这一期的主要内容用中文做一个比较完整的总结放在前面，这样如果你只是想先快速了解这期聊了什么，听完这段中文的部分其实也能够带走不少信息。如果你对后面的英文原声访谈感兴趣，也可以接着往下听。
Let humans just continue to do everything. That's a big mistake.Every leader right now needs to start looking at the design of the workplace. What work gets done by robots? What work gets done by AI?
那今天这期节目我们请到的嘉宾是 Danilo McGarry。 Danilo 是英国人，过去20多年一直在做 AI 自动化和企业转型相关的工作，之前也帮花旗集团、联合健康集团这样大型的企业做过 AI 转型和自动化的项目。他自己在节目里面提到，过去的20年里面他参加过1400多个不同规模的项目，所以他的视角并不是停留在最近的这一波 AI 热潮里面，他是长期的都在看一家组织到底怎么样适应技术的变化，怎么样把新的能力装进公司的运作方式里面。
So companies have to think about how to do that. And the best way to do it is a workflow engine that coordinates the work between digital and human workers.
我觉得这期特别值得聊，一个很重要的原因是我们其实是眼看着企业里面关于 AI 的讨论一步步的变化过来的。去年我们还在中国和腾讯云一起访谈了10来家公司里面的 CTO， 那个时候大家讨论的最多的还是怎么衡量 AI 的效果，怎么回答老板或者董事会那些并不是很现实的问题，怎么样大规模的使用新的工具，到底要用什么样的指标去看，怎么判断值不值得投入，怎么证明它是不是已经开始带来回报。那个时候企业里面的 AI 讨论就是重点是怎么样衡量。到了今年呢，整个风向就很不一样了。现在很多公司不太停留在值不值的问题上了，而是焦虑自己是不是已经落后了，是不是 token 还用得不够多，是不是别人都在说自己是 AI first organization， 自己也得赶紧做出来一点动作。也就是说，现在企业里面的 AI 讨论已经越来越像是一种焦虑推动下的这个使用竞赛。表面上看大家都是在比谁更积极，但深一层次的问题其实是这些公司到底有没有真的把 AI 用起来，有没有真的把组织、流程、目标、文化调成合适 AI 的状态。
Without the strategy at the top, nothing moves, because then people don't know the rules of the game and they don't know how to go after making the company an AI first organization.
Danilo 这一期的节目最核心的一个判断就是，很多公司现在的问题并不是没有工具，也不是员工不会用 AI， 而是公司本身没有真正的清楚的 AI 策略。大家都说自己要做 AI first company， 那真正的问题就是，那这个公司到底先想改什么，后改什么，什么应该量化，什么最不应该量化，什么地方交给 AI， 什么地方还必须保留人的判断。没有这些东西，最后就变成一个很荒谬的状态，大家都在用 AI， token 也一直在烧，但公司本身并没有实质的变化。Danilo 在节目里面提到了一套自己的顺序，你不一定会完全同意，但是我觉得很值得拿来当一个思考的框架。
A real leader measures what should be measured. Those are different things.
大致上他认为第一步不是把所有的事情都扔给 AI， 而是先设计清楚人和 AI 怎么协同，也就是工作流怎么重新安排。而第二步不是拿着旧流程跑得更快，而是先重做那些旧的流程。因为如果流程本身就有问题，你只是让一个更强的系统把问题放大了而已。那第三步，既然 AI 带来了以前没有的能力，公司就不能只想着省钱，还得去想有没有可能长出新的产品、新的服务和新的业务。那最后在这些基础上面，我们才去谈更高维度的自动化和自治。听下来你会发现，他真正关心的始终是同一件事情，不是让公司开始用 AI 就算完成任务，而是让公司真正的变成一个更适合 AI 的运作组织。这套说法里面我觉得有2个点特别值得记住。第一个就是员工都在用 AI 不代表公司已经转型，公司给大家上了 AI 培训课也不代表它已经变成了 AI first organization。那这个区分非常的重要，因为现实里面很多企业现在在做的其实还是买工具、做试点、做培训，或者像他批评的那样，慢慢的变成了一种 token maxing 的这种假勤奋，看起来很忙很热闹，很像在推进东西，但是真正的更难的部分，比如说是组织设计、业务目标、流程的重构、文化和激励等等，这些其实并没有动。
Going after tokens, spending as many tokens as you can, makes no sense in a company that has a real strategy.
那第二点是他讲的文化的实话并没有停留在很虚的大家要有危机感啊，大家要主动学习啊，最后重要的并不是有没有几个 AI 产品，就是 AI 明星员工哈，而是有没有把 AI 这件事情真正的写进每个人的目标里面。如果这件事情不影响绩效，不影响奖金，不影响晋升，那它最后就会变成一个大家都知道重要但是没有人真正去优先做的事情。这个判断我自己是挺有感触的，因为很多组织里真正推动变化的从来不是口号，而是激励机制。
If you don't put it in people's annual objectives, that affects their performance, it affects their promotions and affects their bonuses, then they're not going to focus or care about it.
最后我还挺喜欢这一期结尾的一个小点，虽然它不完全属于企业转型的方法论，但我觉得放在现在这个时间节点还是蛮有价值的。
So the advice that I have for people who are anxious is you got to split your life into 3 different circles.
Danilo 提到了面对 AI 带来的焦虑，一个人可以把自己的生活分成3个圈。第一层是你直接能控制的，比如你今天学了什么，做了什么，注意力放在哪里。第二层是你能影响但是不能直接控制的，比如你怎么带团队，怎么影响同事。第三层是你那些既控制不了也影响不了的事情，比如很多宏观政治、社交媒体上每天滚来滚去的信息。真正能让一个人在 AI 时代不被焦虑吞掉的，可能不是知道更多，而是学会把注意力放在前2层。我觉得这个建议听起来有一点点的鸡汤，但放在今天这样的一个大家都容易焦虑，也都容易被信息推着走的环境里面，反而是很实用的。
And at the end of the day, the most important way to learn is by getting your hands dirty, is actually doing it yourself.
总的来说，这期节目其实不仅仅适合大公司来听，无论你是在一家中型呢，还是这个小型企业在推动公司的 AI 转型，正在摸索怎么样把 AI 运用到自己的日常工作里面，我觉得 Danilo 今天的这套框架里面或多或少可能都会给大家一些启发。它未必是唯一的答案，但我觉得至少会帮助我们把一些关键的问题想得更清楚。另外也想顺便提醒大家一下，我们最近其实都在有持续的更新我们的视频内容，像是这样的英文访谈，我们通常都会加上字幕。如果有一些相对更加抽象或者是理解门槛稍微高一点的话题，比如前几期聊到的太空数据中心啊这种内容的时候，我们也会尽量补充一些画面和辅助说明，帮助大家更好的理解。如果你对这种形式感兴趣，也欢迎你去各个视频平台上面搜索我们的节目，国内像是 B 站视频号，海外像是 YouTube， 包括我自己的小红书也都会陆续更新相关的内容的。好了，那下面就是我们今天的节目。
在节目的开始前，和你分享一个消息。你知道春秋假吗？这是一个给中小学生的3天的假期。今年它被正式写入了政府工作报告。那为什么一个小小的假期会被写进报告呢？以及从2004年浙江杭州开始试点到现在20多年过去了，春秋假的实施为什么艰难？这看起来是个小假期，牵动的却是整个系统，甚至还和什么是学习，什么是玩耍的观念变化有关。我们的节目 Knock Knock 世界就解读了这个话题，大家可以在单集简介中查看链接。
Hello, welcome to today's What's Next in Tech. Welcome, Danilo. Welcome to my show.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks. Really big pleasure to be here and to talk about these things.
All right, let's get right to it. Do you see any difference between all your past 20 years of work with a large enterprise, how their automation is done, and comparing to today's? Is your method difference?
So the idea of making things faster and more efficient, this is not new, right? And it really comes down to human psychology around trying to make more with less. Or more with the same. There is the digital version of the conveyor belt from Henry Ford up until today, I would argue, in companies where everybody has very siloed thinking, they have a very specific job to go and do. So, the idea of making things faster, not new. This is the first time that we have a technology that actually has the potential, and I would argue today, is more intelligent than 99% of humans. And this is where we start getting into the point of, okay, we have something more intelligent than us, so what are we going to do about it? And it's funny that you brought up in the beginning that, we see that it's a token race, right? Whoever spends the most token wins or keeps their job. And that's a very typical scenario to see in a world where there isn't much leadership happening, right? A lot of leaders are just saying, I want to be an AI first organization. I want to be an AI first company, but they don't actually explain the strategy and the steps that need to be taken in order to get there.
Probably no one knows yet, right?
No, it's completely the wrong way. I mean, it's just like it's the hit and hope approach. It's like if I do this enough, we will start seeing something interesting happening. We will start seeing something tangible happening. And this is the wrong way to think, right? Usually people do this when they have no strategy. And I would argue that, there are actually a couple of companies which, we'll explain why they haven't come to the market yet about this. There are a couple of individuals that do understand this, and I believe I'm one of them. And I've been helping, some of the world's biggest companies get this right. I mean, this is so important for a company to get AI right today, because it really means that they're securing their future. And if all companies are securing their future, or most of them, then they're securing jobs. And by securing jobs, you secure people's livelihood and their way of being.
You were just saying that the AI is smarter than 90% of the people. I, me, myself, have to confess, when I'm talking to my coworkers these days, I have a little bit less patience. Like, what would be a good strategy? For example, people were last year using RIs. What are the most important goals to make?
It's not something that's really much of an argument. AI is able to do it faster, better than us. Okay, now that we know this, what should we do as a strategy? If I go and I have my company, and I start to, let humans just continue to do everything, that's a big mistake. Every leader right now needs to start looking at the design of the workplace. What work gets done by robots? What work gets done by AI? And the trick here is to make sure that you're giving work to AI, because it is better and faster than humans at most things. The real coordination here is the strategy needs to be that you need to do that in harmony. And the most effective way that I found as a strategy is by having workflow engines. So work needs to go and get done, and AI picks up the beginning of it, does a little bit, gives it to a human, and then the human continues, gives it back to an AI, and there's back and forth until they have finished that task or that piece of work. So companies have to think about how to do that. And the best way to do it is a workflow engine that coordinates the work between digital and human workers. Okay? That's number one. Number two is making sure that you're not taking the old tasks of doing things and just trying to do those old tasks faster. Because what's going to happen is you're giving a suboptimal process, a suboptimal task that has not been redesigned to a super system that can do it faster. So I'll give you an example. Every company on earth needs to make payments, right? Receive payments and make payments, have an accounting team, etc. If I was going to do that with an AI system, I would have it automatically read and scrape all of the invoices and then get a human to sample check some of the payments, and then having an agent, an AI agent, log into a banking system, go and make the inputs and then make the payments, or having mass uploads of hundreds of thousands of payments at the end of the day to do everything at once by using APIs. This is a very normal, basic example, but it's for people to understand something basic, that work has to be redesigned. So that's, number two, redesigning current work. Number three is, this new superpower of AI gives us new capabilities we didn't have before. So every leader right now, every company owner should be looking at what other new products, what other new services can I now start offering now that I have this super intelligence next to me? Do I go build a new product? Do I build a new service powered by AI? There are infinite options, right? This is why we're starting to see in the world something called the convergence of industries. So a consultancy company is starting to offer legal services because it's able to write contracts now with AI. So three is, looking at the new opportunities. Then and only then, and this is what shocks people with my strategy, I only look at, then I try to make everything autonomous. I don't do that in the beginning with bad processes. I redesign processes. I create new opportunities for the company that I'm in. and then I optimize everything as much as I can to the point where it's autonomous. Like it doesn't matter if you 10x the amount of clients, you still need the same amount of people to run that department. And that's where you really, the mistake the companies make is they try to optimize bad processes. They don't think about the harmony of humans and digital workers. They don't think about new products and services. And then they try to scale all of those imperfect things later.
So basically, this is the step 1, 2, 3. They have to go through like sequence, right? You have to build the foundation, and then you can explore the more business opportunity by leveraging it, like step 3.
Yeah. If you're doing your job properly as a leader, if you have a medium-sized company, you're going to have hundreds of opportunities of things to go and make better, and hundreds of products and services to go and launch. So I'll give you an example. It could be that I have a project that it's not the biggest ROI. But if I build that first, then I have reusable components in software and in operations that I can reuse for the other things I need to go and optimize faster. So for me, in the strategies that I work with, some of the world's biggest companies, it's always a choice of both. You choose the biggest ROI projects, or you choose the most strategic projects in terms of scaling your reusable components. And that's where you kind of get a really good mix of, okay, this is my transformation roadmap for the next 2, 3, or 5 years, and let's go and execute, and sticking to that transformation roadmap and being as aggressive and as fast as you can in order to get the biggest results.
So that comes probably the harder question is, sometimes it's not about AI, it's about the organization. There could be already politics happening in the company. So maybe the CEO bought in, and then the CEO is not, and who's going to execute on it, and then who's get more resource from it. It's always probably going to be a mess. So how do like a leader navigate through this? Like, how do we do that?
The number one mistake I see companies make is they try to do all of these things that I mentioned, but without first aligning the shareholders and the board members. And through research that I've done myself through hundreds of companies, is that roughly 80% of companies don't have enough knowledge about AI in order to have a strategy. So the strategy has to start at C-level and at board level. And without, you cannot go and do all of these things that I mentioned without having a top-line strategy first, alignment. So one of the first things that I do when I help companies is I go and meet all the board members. Is I install someone that understands AI into that company, into the board. And then once they have the education, they can start making the top-level strategy and then doing these other 5 things that I mentioned. But I've seen companies take 5 years to go and do that. I've seen companies take 6 months to go and do that.
So is it mainly because how they learn things fast, or the size of the organization, or what's the difference between 5 years and 2 months?
To be honest, I've seen no noticeable difference between a medium to large company when it comes to transformation roadmaps and how long they last. There's no difference. The only difference I see between a medium and a large company is obviously to set the strategy for a medium company. If you have the right leadership, it's faster. And for a larger company who's a listed company, right, who is representing a huge part of the economy of a country, it takes a little longer because they are regulated, or they just have more shareholders to go and speak to.
Got it. Isn't it because you have to teach the executive, the board, to understand it, and then the executive team teach the manager, and the manager have to help out to create the processes and new SOPs, automate stuff, and then the employees can learn about it. So that takes longer time, right?
No, so this is where the trick is in scaling fast, okay? Once you've set the strategy at the top, detailing exactly what you want to do with AI as a company, how aggressive you want to be, what's the budget, what's the time frame, where you should not go and do things with AI in the company. Once that is set, then all of the managers and everybody who's working for the leadership will know what to do because they know the rules. They know the frameworks they have to follow. They know how much budget they can allocate to AI. They know what is the objective of the company for the next 3 years. So they then know how to behave. So for instance, things like, token hunting, right? Going after tokens, spending as many tokens as you can makes no sense in a company that has a real strategy of, we're going to go in and make these 3 business areas better, guys. And you have 3 years. Here's the things you should or should not do. Here's the frameworks that's been developed they need to follow. Go and do it. People will know what to do, and that's when the scale really happens. That's why without the strategy at the top, nothing moves, because then people don't know the rules of the game, and they don't know how to go after making the company an AI-first organization.
Got it. So sometimes it's not just about making very simple general rules, like just token maxing. It's not a great strategy. Let the employee figure out themselves. It's not a great strategy.
The problem with this, I've heard this strategy from many leaders, right? For instance, if you're an engineer, a coder, if you're not spending at least half of your salary on tokens, then you're going to be fired. What if I go and cheat and I start making banana pictures and that's how I spend half of my tokens? You see, in the world of business, it's very easy to measure what's easy to measure. But a real leader measures what should be measured. Those are different things. If I'm a lazy leader, I'm going to go measure how many tokens people are using. If I'm a real leader, I'm going to be measuring, are people spending tokens on the things we've set the objectives and the strategy for the year? Are they spending things on that? Are they making these 3 things that we focus on for the year better, faster, cheaper, better for clients? I'm going to be measuring the things that I should be measuring. And this is the thing, right? This is why I have a campaign for the last couple of years on lazy leaders.
节目中间插播一条招聘信息，生动活泼正在招聘全职的商务运营经理、生动早咖啡内容实习生和社群实习生。如果你也对播客行业的内容制作感兴趣，欢迎投递简历。具体的岗位介绍和投递方式可以在 show notes 中找到。
So previously we talked about like just adding the tool or just kind of hire like smart people who knows like transform company into AI first company. And where can we find more information and then like resources that help you learn?
Yeah. But just one quick thing, which I think is quite important, because a lot of leaders, they say, I don't have money to start AI, or, I don't have the education, or I don't have the data. That's another one. These are huge misconceptions I think we should discuss. So, not having money for AI, that's a big, misconception. AI is actually not that expensive. So if you're going to spend, a couple of million on something, but your return on investment is going to be 10, 20 million, then all of a sudden that AI project is no longer expensive and you have the budget for it. So that's one thing. The other thing is a technique called snowballing. So it goes back to that concept where I mentioned the transformation roadmap, where you pick either ROI or you pick sequencing for reusable components. If you pick ROI, it's very good for a company who doesn't have a lot of budget allocation in the start. Because what happens is you only pick 1 or 2 projects. You then take the ROI of that project and reinvest back in the next 3 or 5 projects. And then you take the ROI from those and you deliver it, and then you take the ROI and invest in another 10 projects. So you can very quickly snowball if you don't have the budget, right? If you pick the right projects, the biggest ROI, the ones that have the biggest return on investment, and you agree to take the proceeds of that to reinvest in other projects, great way to do it, and it snowballs. It's a slower way to start, but it's a way to start when management and the company is not fully convinced or they don't fully understand how this stuff works, right? It's a safe way of doing things. Data, very quickly on data, because another framework and thing that I've learned. One of the biggest misconceptions in the last 20 years, and this was created by the big consultancy companies, is that you, as a company, you have to go and clean your data. You have to have perfect data in order to do most things, especially AI. And here is my argument and what I found. Data does not exist out of thin air. Data is a byproduct of a process. Data is a byproduct of somebody doing something that generates that data, right? So my argument is, if you clean up your processes as a company, you make them as efficient as possible, that will then determine where your data should go and what data should go where. And then once you've determined that, that's how you then migrate all of the old data into the new form that they should be in. So look, there's a lot of misconceptions, but those are two of the biggest. It's not have enough money and my data is all wrong. So how do I learn? I have some bad news actually. There's no course that I can point people to. Pre-recorded courses, terrible. In-person courses, good, depending on the trainer. Obviously, you don't want a YouTuber, a person who's never done this stuff before to go and train you. So you have to pick very carefully who is a trainer. The third way of learning is getting your hands dirty. You have to go and try the stuff out.
I see that there's a lot of like consulting firm. They're very active in this space. How do you find the good consultant even?
Many of consultants, they have just read books about it. They've done little projects here and there. But very, very few consultants have done very big company transformations, right? So it's also, I know Steve Jobs was not a fan of consultants, right? Because, he would also bring consultants into Apple when he was the CEO of Apple. And, he wouldn't see much difference because his team were living and breathing everything to do with the company. Conferences, I think it's quite helpful to go to a conference. The only problem with these types of conferences is that, people are incentivized to paint a better picture than they really, did, if that makes sense. But I encourage people to, when somebody's up on stage talking in the conference about their AI perspective, once that person comes off the stage, try to speak to them one-to-one. And ask them the real questions like, look, you're off camera now. Tell me how it really was. Tell me your real pain points.
There are a lot of like big company, big corporations sharing their best practices. Like a couple of weeks ago, Block CEO, he shared about how they transformed Block into AI first company, even though they didn't need to like firing that many people. But they did. And also I just learned about like Amazon. They basically put everyone through this 8 weeks courses for just learn about AI, like upskilling themselves. And like, how do you see these companies doing their AI transformation?
What basically I see in the market right now is that a lot of companies, they overhired during COVID because they wanted to get back into business and they wanted to be aggressive. True. And now a lot of companies are actually saying, because of AI, we're going to fire these people. Let me say something really quick here, because I think this is really important, and it's something I'm a big advocate for. The really good companies that use AI, they don't fire people. Remember that I mentioned that industries are converging. Every company can do anything they want right now. They can go and create new products, new services. This is going to then create new jobs. If a company is creating new products and services, or they're able to just transform their own company with AI, that takes a lot of people, and that takes a lot of mental power, a lot of budget. You're not going to be firing people if you need to transform your company. And what happens is, once I see companies starting to transform with AI, what happens is they then free up capacity to go and create new products and services. So those people get redeployed. Yeah. Of course, every company goes through a natural attrition, but the one thing I'm trying to teach companies is also, look, just because you have AI, it doesn't mean you can start firing people. If you're a true leader, you can create these new opportunities and you can transition your company into other industries, and that will actually create more jobs, not less. So again, it's a very a short-termist way of thinking. It's a lazy leadership approach just to fire a bunch of people because you have AI. It doesn't, I don't know, maybe I'm a bit too romantic about this word leadership.
Yeah, that made me think of so when our company adopting AI, some people are more interested in learning new things. Some people are kind of less fast. It's not the only matter. Sometimes it's your cultures.
Well, I'll give you a little cheat code. So, one of the things I had to do my whole life was to find ways to create the right culture for AI and the right way to incentivize people, right? People of all sorts. When you look at any medium to large company today, they have up to 5 generations working in that company. Every generation will have a different thing that they're going to be motivated by. And then there's subsegments of those generations where people who came back from poor backgrounds, people who came from rich backgrounds, all kinds of things, right? And everyone's going to be motivated by a different thing. There is one thing that I found is a bit of a hack for all of that. And the one thing is, if you don't put it in people's annual objectives, that affects their performance, it affects their promotions, and affects their bonuses, then they're not going to focus or care about it. Okay? So if it is in my company strategy, And it's been determined at the board level or the ownership level that we're going to do AI in this very specific way in a strategy. And then that trickles down into people's annual objective for every single employee that they need to go and save 10% or they need to create 10% more with AI. Something as simple as that. One big mistake that I personally made in some of my transformations is that, I would, there would be a couple of people that start doing this stuff, in accounting, in marketing, and so on, in HR, and they do a lot of cool things. And I used to then champion those. Those would be my AI champions in the company. And we put their case studies all over the intranet site of the company. We'd give them awards, maybe a little bit of a bonus. And we get them to evangelize, right, to talk to other people about this great work that they're doing. But one thing that I found is that it doesn't build enough inertia. It doesn't build enough momentum to get the whole company bought into the strategy and the whole company thinking about that thing, which is AI and how to make it better, right? So the only way that I found, which is a culture hack, which is really helping companies scale, is by putting it into every single person's objective. It does make the company jump forward a couple of years. It gets them really invested into the idea because it impacts their livelihood, right? It impacts their paycheck and impacts their promotions. Some of them are going to love this and they're going to use it in a really amazing way. I've met people who are in their 80s and they've never coded before in their life, and they're building applications today because of the experience, the domain knowledge that they have acquired for 40 years in a particular space, right? And I've seen young people who have never worked before build things with AI because they just have that hunger to go and make something. And by the way, you don't create a culture just by setting the objectives. One thing is important. You have to provide people with a good learning and development program as well. So that's why Amazon, for instance, is making it mandatory for people to take some courses. I think this is going to be pretty normal going forward. A lot of companies are going to make it mandatory to take certain courses on AI. So there's a number of things that a company needs to do to set a culture for an AI-first organization. It's not just one ingredient. It's not going to max out your tokens. It's a number of things that in accumulation and together in the right design creates an environment where you have the right culture to become an AI-first organization.
Any failed thing that you see for the past few months that we shouldn't do it at all?
Look, in total now, I counted this a couple of weeks ago. I've been involved in 1,400 projects when it comes to AI efficiency transformations. And I don't think anybody should look at any of those as failures, because end of the day, remember that education is something that compounds over time. If you start something, a year ago versus somebody who started today, and you follow the right frameworks and you're systematic about it, you are going to be ahead of the person that started today, because you learned and you failed at certain things that you then tweaked and improved, and you did certain things so you don't fail the next time. And you did that more often than the person who starts today. Our hope is that in the company, the portfolio of projects that you have to transform, that it's going to be more than 50% are going to be successes. That's the hope that you can have, and you can manage that, and you can actually ensure that that's the case if you have the right frameworks. So failures that I saw, they always really came down to human issues, right? So you mentioned politics, for instance. The biggest failures that I've seen in technology projects and AI projects is, a project is presented to a management committee or leadership, and what happens is the numbers are not good enough. And the people who are presenting that project are then incentivized to produce bigger numbers. Everybody's exaggerating their capabilities because they want to look like they're doing better. It's the same thing in business when people present projects. So they set the wrong expectations in the beginning of the project. It sounds great in the beginning, but then 6 months later, 12 months later, when they start seeing the results, it looks like a failure. But in fact, what happened is they set the wrong expectations in the beginning. So this is one of the biggest failures I see. It's the human greed. It's the politics that happens at board level, where C-level executives are so behind on their AI journey, and shareholders are expecting so much more from them that whenever they see AI use cases, they're asking for more. They're asking for more numbers.
So therefore, there's anxiety, not just from the employee level, managers, boss, C-levels, everyone. So back to this whole reason to create this episode is like, how do we learn all this? How do we keep updating our knowledges? Like we see people like blog sharing their information, how they transform their company. Like, how do you learn about all these things? And how do you kind of updating your knowledge base?
I think the most important way to learn is, like I mentioned, right? You go to in-person discussions and demos. Mm-hmm. Some conferences, not all.
Right.
You need to have real conversations with people. It's not just about the fancy marketing stuff. Like really ask them how to do it. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, the most important way to learn is by getting your hands dirty, is actually doing it yourself.
Right.
So there's no other way. There's no shortcut. It's not a question anymore of, do we have the right technology? As of 2 or 3 years ago, we have enough technology to transform any company. It's now down to leadership. It's now down to the imagination of people to go and design that, and then to be relentless about executing that transformation roadmap that they come up with. It's not about technology anymore. There's nothing more that we need from a technology point of view. It's really about people. So if I work in a team in a company today, and I map out everything that I do, right? And I go, okay, well, every day I do this, and every month I have a month-end process. Every year I have a month-year process, and this is the 50 steps that I do. And they go into the details. Okay, how exactly? What are the different ways that this happens every day, every month, every year? They're going to start having a roadmap of what is the current as is, right? Like what is the current way of working? Just by mapping that out, you're going to see many areas that you can go and improve. So, as you go along, even if you work in a small team, a big team, it doesn't matter. You can start to redesign the to-be process, right? And that's how you start thinking about the future of work. You gotta take your teams, you gotta ask them to map out what they do, so they can rethink about how they should be working going forward. So it's very important that happens, and that's the way to do it. That's the way to start.
You were saying you doesn't matter. It's a Chinese company, U.S. company, European company. All the executives, or they're all facing the same problems. Do you see any differences here? Because you're coming to China very soon in 3-4 weeks. Yeah. So what are you curious to see? What do you think the most of differences between what you learn?
One thing that I've seen quite a lot about China that I really love is when there was an open claw frenzy in China. Yeah. Like there were people going out in the streets and learning how to use open claw. Like it was just really, crazy. Like people really wanted to learn. Whereas, many other countries, they see AI as a threat. It's like a loaded word. It's like a tension word. Whereas I think, China sees it in a more entrepreneurial way. Like, what's in it for me? What can I do for my boss? How can my company do better? In a lot of other countries, not the same attitude towards it. And I think this attitude is going to be one of the reasons why China ends up leading AI in many elements in the next few years.
Yeah, I also heard from one of my journalist friends. She's from Netherlands. She's stationed in Beijing, and she's surprised that last year there's a advertisement from McDonald's or some company. They use AI to create their commercials. There's huge pushback. Like people hate it. There's not well reception there, but in China, everyone loves it. And there's AI created short drama thing, and everyone just been enjoying it. The whole my family, they've been playing around with the Gmon, kind of like a Sora China version. And Sora's dead. And at the same time, they're sending 10, 20 different those short videos in my family chat, which is totally different world. Yeah, I agree with you.
Everything in life ultimately boils down to attitude. Your attitude is determined by your perspective on life.
Right.
So if you've had a hard background and you see an opportunity, you'll see that with a great attitude, right? Because you see that as an opportunity to do something.
So last question. I think everyone in this AI era, including C-level executives, are very anxious about AI. Maybe losing their jobs, losing their performance, etc. How do you manage your anxiousness? Do you have any tool that you can share with us?
Yeah, I can understand fully that AI is making people anxious, right? So the advice that I have for people who are anxious is you got to split your life into 3 different circles. And these are circles that I call circles of influence, right? So circle number 1, if I can make a circle, is this is what you control directly. So where you eat, what you eat, who do you talk to, what do you spend your day on? And it's very important that you optimize that in order to make sure that it's healthy and productive, so you're able to look after the other circles I'm about to talk about next. The next circle after that is your sphere of influence. So these are things that you don't directly control, but you can influence. So for instance, if I have a work colleague and I want them to learn more about AI, I can keep showing them demos of AI. I can keep showing them the great work that I'm doing with AI. And then eventually that person will get interested and start doing it. I can influence that person, right? And that's where I think everybody should stop. Because the third circle is everything else, right? These are things that I can't influence. I don't have direct control of. I don't have direct control of or influence of who's going to be the next president of a major country. I don't have direct control over if a meteoroid is going to hit the Earth. Things which are completely out of your control. And I've got so good at, splitting my life into these 3 different circles that literally, when something comes up on the news and I look at, okay, this looks like it's big news. Is it in my direct circle of influence? No, I delete it. I forget about it. You're having to prioritize what you're thinking of so that you're only focusing on the things that you can actually do something about. Manage their life better. And once you get good at practicing these 3 spheres of influence, it's amazing how your anxiety levels go down and your productive, positive output increases, because you're really only going to focus on things that you can do something about. Everything else, you don't spend any attention or any energy on it.
Especially today in the social media world, you see so many informations and politics and stuff really kind of messed up.
Yeah, I'm so strict about these 3 circles that I don't discuss politics. I don't watch the news. Yeah, if it's not in your circle of influence, literally delete it, and you will live a much more fulfilling and a lot more happier life, because it's really helped me, and I'm sleeping a lot better at night, and I'm just a lot happier. I have more energy because I'm focusing on the right things.
All right. Looking forward to see you in China in May, and then I hope you have a fruitful trip.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Danilo. Thank you for sharing all the information. Looking forward to see your new book too.
Thanks.
今天的科技早知道就到这里了。听完之后，如果你有任何的想法，欢迎在评论区和我们交流。
如果有任何想听的话题，也请告诉我们。如果你喜欢我们的节目，请记得分享给更多的朋友。
那我们下期再见。
下期再见。